It is round two of the MIAA playoffs, and with that, a fresh week, a new WATD fantasy draft. All right, we had some big performances last week. Star in the on the ground was Liam Appleton, and a lot of that had to do with the dual threat nature. Brendan, you took Liam. We had 112 yards on the ground. He had another 56 yards receiving. He had both of his two touchdowns came as a receiver. Over 28 points for him in that game. Colin Quinlan had a big day at the receiver position, as did Lawson Foley had another touchdown. He's really come on for Situate. Quinlan for you, Brennan. Lawson for me, and then Johnny Marcus Thurston just continues to be not a win for Archies. They didn't look particularly good in the game. Marcus Thurston got his 109 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So pretty nicely spread scoring in this one. But yeah, the way we're going to break it down is Johnny's going to lead us off. He'll have the first pick. I'll have the second. And Brendan will round us out with three. So let's get right into it. Pick number one, round one. Johnny, you are up.
I'm going to go with a running back to start. I'm going to go to the Duxbury-Middleborough game, but I'm not going to go with the favorite. I'm going to go with Middleborough. I'm going to go with Nate Tullish. They're going to need to establish the ground game early against Duxbury, see how it goes, but Nate Tullish is going to have to be a factor.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's obviously going to be a tough matchup for Middleborough, and I think it starts, giving yourself a chance in that starts with slowing the game down a little bit. And Tullish is going to have to be a big piece of that. We know he was struggling with a little bit of a groin issue earlier in the year. They kind of limited him in that game against Rockland, but it seems like he's back going full bore now, so they're going to need him to have a big week. All right, I will go with my number one pick here, and I am also going to go to the running back room. And I'm going to go with a guy that, he's just been excellent this year. He's gotten 10 total touchdowns, 9 of them on the ground. Not that it matters for our fantasy purposes, but he's maybe even better on defense. But I'm going to go with Nick Friel from Hanover. He just is the model of consistency, and I think they're going to need him to have a big day against Walpole, who can defend the pass well, plays a lot of low-scoring games. This one feels like it's going to be a little bit of a grinded-out affair on Thursday night for Hanover, so I'll go with Nick Friel. Close out the first round, Brendan.
You know, I'm looking at the Situate-Holliston matchup, and it's not just because I'm a Situate sailor at heart, born and raised. It's because I think this is going to be a great game between two somewhat evenly matched teams. I think Situate scheduled very hard, which is why they suffered a tougher, result in their regular season. Holliston scheduled difficult themselves, had a few really hard games to begin the year, really rolled through the TVL, however, before getting a tough game with Hopkinton. I think this is a chance for a very evenly matched game, and I think Situate's going to have to pass to stay in it because I think Holliston has the slight edge immediately. So I'm going to go with Jamison Hodlin here.
Oh, all right. I like it. We saw them in studio this past weekend on the Sports Exchange, and Jameson had a little bit of a finger issue. Hopefully that's sorted out, doesn't affect him too much. But I think that as you get deeper into these playoffs, you're going to see more and more teams that can kind of take away your top weapons. And so, that's been Lawson Foley these last couple of weeks. I think if they put the clamps on him, Jamison Hodlin is kind of that tough matchup given his size and the combination of size and speed. So I think he could have a big game in this one. I think it's a great pick, Brendan. All right, round two, Johnny.
I'm going to go with a wide receiver this round. I am going to go. I'm actually going to go. I'm going to go to Hull for this one. A guy that we like to pick throughout the year. I'm going to go with Austin Bongo here. They're playing Cathedral, so I think it'll be a little bit tougher of a matchup than Narragansett. Tough to beat, frankly, an easier one, but I think they'll look early to Bongo, but then hopefully just be able to run out the clock.
Yeah, we'll see about this one. This is Friday night, 6:00 game. I think Hull showed you everything they needed to show you in round one, and hopefully they can continue the lone South Shore rep down there in D8, but obviously the number one seed. So get Bongo involved early and try to get that one put away, as you said, Johnny. Put that one away early. All right, I'm going to go to I'm gonna round out my running back room, and I've got a little bit of indecision on this one because I too am gonna go to that Situate matchup, and I think you've got one guy who puts up a lot of yards and one guy who seems to just clean it on up. They love going with one guy, in tight because he can just bruise it. And you know what? He's a senior captain. I'm going to have to go with Colin Morley. I'm going to leave a really talented running back on the board, but Morley had 3 touchdowns last week and just 4 carries. So the workload isn't high. I'm already I'm very unsure on this one, but I think I'm going to go with Colin Morley. Go ahead, Brennan.
Just debating here. I'm also looking at the running back one, but I feel like I've taken the South Shore League and Patriot League players too much this year, so I'm going to dip my toe into the Catholic Conference. I'm going to say Michael Oates this week. I haven't taken him all season long. I've used Montero before. I've used Henry Hasselbeck, if I'm not mistaken. It's time to use the running back in charge there, and I think he's going to have a big week.
They're going to
tough matchup against Central.
Yeah,
I think they're going to need him.
They're going to need him. Absolutely. I don't think they're going to just get it done with Henry in the passing game. I think they're going to need Michael to continue having big game after big game. I'm so intrigued by this matchup. I think
it's a test.
It's a legitimate test. It's the first test that Springfield Central has had since they played St. John's from down in DC in week 3, I think. I'm just interested. I mean, it's going to tell you a lot about where Springfield Central is relative to the rest of the field, because I think that you could make the case that Severian is maybe the second or third best team in that field after Springfield Central. And Springfield Central still has a little bit of that unknown factor. We saw what they did to Central Catholic in week 1, but that's also week 1. So, are they
getting to shootouts too?
Right.
They get into shootouts with the top teams in the state. The Pioneer Valley, they kind of cleaned up against as we expected, but those tougher teams, they get into shootouts with. So I think this could be a show where you have like a 41-35 game or something like that, and whoever has the ball last wins it.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. All right, round 3, Johnny.
I'm going to round out my running back room. I'm going to go with an underdog, and I think they're going to struggle a little bit on offense, but this is the guy they're going to need to play well if they're going to win. I'm going to go to Marshfield. I'm going to go Jack Marini out of the backfield. They've gotten him back recently. And, yeah, he's going to need to have a good game. They're going to need to establish some type of run because KP is a team that actually was able to beat this Severian team. So they're going to have their hands full.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, KP is ridiculous on defense. They haven't even really been all that good offensively this year. They're just so stout on defense. But Marini has gotten his every game since he's been back. So why not go and get it again? They're going to need it. All right, I am going to open up the old running back room. I'm going to go to Battle of the Undefeateds, Plymouth South and Wakefield. And this one's also tough. You're picking between a bunch of guys, but I'm going to go with Jamie Andrews. I feel like he's maybe the most consistent of the Plymouth South receivers. I feel like he's most frequently the guy that kind of gets that receiving touchdown for them. He had another one actually thrown by Cassius Johnson this past week. So I'm gonna look for it to be back-to-back playoff games that Jamie Andrews has a touchdown and take him here as my first receiver off the board. Brendan.
I think I'm going to go with a receiver here. Jumping to the Milton Marblehead matchup, I'm going to go with Luke Salmon as a deep threat this week. I think this is a game where Milton is challenged by Marblehead early on, and they might need to get a few home run plays to really break things open. And that's the guy they turn to when they need one. So I'm going to go with Luke Salmon this week.
I think this has the potential to be the single best game of the weekend. I think that Milton's good, and maybe it feels a little bit early to be talking about them getting into a real dogfight. But Marblehead was just so dominant in their first playoff matchup against a really good defense in Whitman Hanson. They scouted it so well. It feels like a team that's clicking at the right time, and they're the defending champions, and they're almost an afterthought this year. And I think they can really give Milton a tough game. So I think that Luke Salmon is going to be one of many players for Milton that needs to go off for them to really get it going. All right, round 4, Johnny.
Yeah, I was also looking at that Milton wide receiver room, but Brendan beat me to it. So I'll transition over to another top seeded team's wide receiver room. I'm going to go with Chris Walsh of the Duxbury, back to that Middleborough Duxbury game. I think they do start the game through the air. Depends on what the score is at the end, obviously, if they continue, but I do think they're going to open up the playbook against a very good Middleborough team. So I'm going to go with Chris Walsh.
I was looking over this matchup and I have it written down somewhere. So let me see if I can just quickly pull it up. But they did not they just opened it up on Newburyport and were like, hey, Matt Festa, go do what you want to do. I know he had 6 touchdowns. They didn't really 11 total carries in that game against Newburyport for 36 yards. They were just like, all right, Matt, just slice them up, slice them and dice them. And Chris Walsh became the all-time or the single season record holder for touchdowns in a season for Duxbury. So I think that's a solid pick, Johnny, and he clearly gets his time and time again. All right, I guess I'll take the first quarterback off the board, and I'm gonna lean on a guy who seems like he's fueled by playing in big rivalry games, and I'm gonna go with my guy. I'm gonna go with Michael Moriarty for Rockland. I think this game against Abington is interesting. They beat him once. They beat him pretty convincingly. But I don't think that they come in with any less of a chip on their shoulder looking to just continue beating up on Marshfield. We had the Abington guys in studio this year, and one of those things that you kind of forget is that these kids play each other all growing up through youth. And hearing Abington talk about how we just haven't been able to get by this Rockland team, never mind at the high school level, like just these guys as we've gone up against them. I think Michael Moriarty is a big piece of why that is. And I like them to give him an opportunity to kind of throw it around a little bit in this one. So I'm going with Michael Moriarty. Close the book on round 4 here, Brendan.
I'm looking at making my quarterback selection here. That Walpole Hanover game looks like a real juicy one, and I think Ben Scalzi's going to put up big numbers here because he's going to have to. They're going to be going back and forth. You're at the stage of the playoffs where I don't think we're going to see massive blowouts anymore. It's going to be competitive. You might see a couple of blowouts here and there, especially in the lower ranks, but we're at the stage where I think you're going to start seeing more teams compete. So I'm going to go with Ben Scalzi here. I think Hanover gets the edge in this one, but it's going to be tough early on.
He had 19.8 for me last week with 10 of 12, 195-yard, 2-touchdown performance. I think Danny V had him as one of his D3 All-Stars for the weekend. He's been incredibly efficient. He's been mixing it up in the ground. He didn't have anything on the ground in this game, but he has been running the ball well for them of late as well. So a lot of touchdowns. I think 25 total touchdowns for him on the season.
He's been good. He's been good. He's been an MVP candidate. Like, we thought Hanover was going to take a massive step back. We say it over and over again. Michael Landolfi leaves. Oh no, what are they going to do? Ben Scalzi just stepped in and really took over the reins of the offense, and they've done really well for themselves.
Yeah, and even in season, right? I mean, we saw Dave Quinlan get lost for the year in the early portion of the game against Plymouth South. And you're like, okay, well, they've got a pretty deep receiver room, but you're now missing him on both sides of the ball. Where do you go? And they've been, since that game, they've been a force. And Scalzi's at the center of the reason why. So I love it. And a little hat tip, because as long as we've got a roof over our heads, that looks like we'll be on hand on Thursday night for that game, broadcast on WBMS, Hanover Walpole, and I'm so excited. I think it's going to be a fantastic game, as you said, Brendan. All right, Johnny, kick it off with our final round.
Yeah, I got to go quarterback. I'm going to go to a matchup that Brendan already has the running back, but I really think it's going to be a shootout. So I'm going to go Henry Hasselbeck from Sumerian. I think they're going to put up points, win or loss. Like you guys already talked about, I do think it's going to go back and forth. I think it's going to be a high-scoring shootout. I think both Hasselbeck and Oates get theirs, so I'm going to take advantage of that and get Hasselbeck.
I like it. He's been a fun story to watch this year, right? A guy that wasn't super on anybody's radar, obviously playing the ISL. Just from our point of view, we're not going to be quite as aware of what you're doing, but he's come in. He's been really, really strong for them. And I think, like you said, it's just that's going to be, if they're going to win that game, it's not, we're not looking at a 17-14 game. Springfield Central's averaging like 55 points a game. So Sumerian's going to have to score with them, even if it's, a game that they want to keep down in the 30s. They're going to have to score, and Hasselbeck's going to have to be a big piece of that. All right, I'm going to close out. I just need a receiver. I have a lot of guys from matchups we've already touched on, so I guess that's freeing in a little bit of a sense. So I'm going to make sure if you're getting points for Scalzi, Brendan, I'm getting them too, and I'm going to go with Joe Curran, leading receiver.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Festa. I'm like, that's next level there. But okay, that's a good pick.
I'll save him. We're going to need him once this field gets pared down because we know where he's ending up. I'm gonna go with Joe Curran to close out my draft room. That double dips me on the Hanover matchup, but again, I'm gonna be on hand, and I'm just excited for it. And I think that their offense is just so hot right now. So I like Curran to have a big game.
You guys already mentioned the big Rockland Abington game. I've been looking at this matchup, and I just haven't been able to pick the right guy I think I want for it yet. So I'm going to go with a running back here from Rockland. You mentioned it. They seem to love this matchup, this rivalry, and they always seem to, for some reason or another, come out on the winning end, whether it's a 1-point game, 10-point game. They always seem to win for some reason. Maybe that changes this week and Abington gets payback, but I'm going to lean with Colstring this week.
Jacob Colstring, our Mr. Not So Irrelevant in the 15-man draft, but yeah, I'll just give a quick plug for Lucas Leander, who doesn't come off the board this week, but I'm certain will in past weeks. He's gotten himself going, and now that they really have a back to a full power duo in the backfield, they're going to be really tough to beat. Abington's going to have their hands full this week, and Colstring's having a season for the ages. I mean, he's really been fantastic this year. So I got a good pick to close it out. All right, Johnny out of the 1 spot, quarterback Henry Hasselbeck out of Severian, running backs Nate Tullish from Middleborough and Jack Marini from Marshfield, wide receivers Austin Bongo from Hull and Chris Walsh from Duxbury. Out of the 2 spot, my quarterback is Michael Moriarty. My running backs are Nick Friel and Colin Morley, and my wide receivers are Jamie Andrews and Joe Curran. And Brendan, out of the 3 spots, your quarterback is Ben Scalzi. Your running backs, Jacob Colstring and Michael Oates. Wide receivers, Jamison Hodlin and Luke Salmon. All right, that is your fantasy WATD fantasy draft for week 2 of the playoffs. We will have 3 games for you on the weekend. This weekend, full slate. Excited to bring them all to you. At the time of this recording, we still have to firm up with ADs to make sure we're visiting, so I'll save a couple of them. But you can find out where they are on our Twitter at SE on WATD. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. I appreciate those of you who have. Seems like we're moving in the right direction with that. So you can see episodes of WATD Sports Desk, the fantasy draft, all that here. We'll have some more content coming your way in the winter. But for now, that is fantasy draft playoff.